Decomposing multiples of 10, 100, 1000 before multiplying. So when we decompose a number, that means we break it down into smaller parts that we can manage. And when we're decomposing multiples of 10, 100, or 1000, that means we are taking out the powers of 10 that are there. So an example of that would be, if I had 3 times 40, my job is to figure out how many 10s are in 40, or if there's a 10 in 40, and break that down. So instead of having 3 times 40, I could break it down into 3 times 4 10s, because that's all 40 is 4 10s. So if you think about that, that is very much like me saying 3 times 4 times 10, because that's what 4 10s means. And when you do that, then you can work with smaller numbers. I know in this case it might seem a little bit easier. So if I have 3, let me pick a brighter color. If I have 3 times 4, I can figure those out. So I know that 3 times 4 is 12. And I know that multiplying by a 10 moves each of my digits over once in the place value chart. So here's an example. If I have 1s, 10s, 100s. So if I have 12, and it's written like this, once I move everything over once, I would have 100, 2 10s, 0 1s, which would give me 120. So then if I have 3 times 400, it would be the same as saying 3 times 400s. Now we know from powers of 10 that hundreds is just 10 times 10, 2 times. So I could also write 3 times 4 times 10 times 10. And so since we already know that 3 times 4 is 12, we already know that this is 12, and we know that 12 times 10 is 120. We know that we're moving it over yet another place in the place value chart, which is going to add another 0 behind it. So there's my 120. That's this much so far. Now, if I move everything over once again in this place value chart, the 1 is going to be in this place, which is the thousands. So that's 1, 2 hundreds, 0 10s, and 0 1s. Multiplying by 10 is just moving to the left on that place value chart. Okay, so the last one we have here is 3 times 4,000. So we could write 3 times 4,000. We also could multiply 3 times 4 times 10 times 10 times 10. We know that 1,000 is just 10 to the third power, or 10 times 10 times 10. Again, using our place value chart to help us, we already know what 3 times 4 times 10 is. It's 1,200. And you could even tack that onto the end of this. So if I multiply yet another 10, I would just be moving it over one more time. And so when I got it over one more time, I know that that's my 10,000s place. So I know that it's 1,200 with yet another 0 at the end. Because my 1 would go in the 10,000s, my 2 would be in the thousands, and then I would have 3 zeros at the end. And so that's decomposing the numbers. That's what they mean by taking them apart and using smaller numbers that you know to get the answer.